little mouse taking over this old house, waiting for my chance to shine. I am gonna make you mine. All I wanna do is impress you with my mouse trap. All I wanna do is convince you with my cheese. All I wanna do is be the coolest cat here, but I'll need some more super greed. Spend a lot of extra time waiting for the acolyte. I am gonna catch that fool. You will think I'm really cool. All I wanna do is impress you with my mouse trap. All I wanna do is convince you with my cheese. All I wanna do is be the coolest cat here, but I'll need some more super greed. Just watch me, mouse. Just watch me catch you. Just watch me, mouse. Just watch me catch you, catch you, catch you. All I wanna do is impress you with my mouse trap. All I wanna do is convince you with my cheese. All I wanna do is be the coolest cat here, but I'll need some more super greed. Oh, but I need some more super greed. Oh, but I need some more super greed.
Hello, MouseHunt. Welcome to Feedback Friday. Today is April 16, 2021. My name's Dave. Hello, everybody in the chat. How you doing today? Hope everybody's doing well. Looks like we have about 60 hunters hanging out. Hello, everybody. Hello, Jenneth. Tarako says, must be Dave. We have music. Hey, Dave. Says, as if. XKDBZ says Mouse Hunt in all caps. I like to see the enthusiasm. Hello, Jason, Aaron. Hey, to you. Aiden, sorry. Hey, Dave. Hello, back at you there. Looks like some daylight saving stuff happened. Yes, our clocks went forward here. Not too long ago. It was a few weeks back, I think. Morning, Dave. Early once again. It's daylight savings time getting us all out of sync, eh? Across the world. Hello, hello. Generic Potato says, please nerf event mice towards rift weapons. It is awful. That would be a little, well, depends which one you're using. Especially with the chocolate bar base, you may not have all your set effects going. Hello, hi there. Awesome jacket. It's a sweater, but thank you. Hello from East Yorkshire, says Jonathan. Well, hello back at you. Well, today, thought we are about halfway through the spring egg hunt. So thought it would be a great time to get feedback and suggestions from hunters. See, what did you enjoy about the various changes to the egg hunt this year? I think I touched on it a little bit a couple weeks ago, but what we like to do so often, especially with the recurring events, is we will set aside kind of the milestone for 2022, if you will, to make the spring egg hunt. That's already all set up. Well, not all set up, but it's already been created. And that's where we like to log a lot of kind of feedback, suggestions, input, a lot of things that we see kind of players mention. And then we'll schedule that for 2-3 months out in advance. And it's just a nice way to review all last year's feedback before we even get started on the next iteration of that event. Or similarly as well, with a little harder with kind of new adventures and permanent content because it's not on the same type of schedule. But we were trying that a little bit with treasure map releases and stuff, kind of follow-up milestones. Wishing you all the well over there. Well, thank you, Math. Roxanne, have I considered getting a webcam that can properly capture your background? I do have another camera, but I tend not to use it while doing Feedback Friday. I tend just to use the one built into my laptop for some reason. Subra says, do we need Paragon loot or glass for the Sky Palace, or is it safe to trade them in for jewels now? It's still kind of being conceptualized a little bit there. I would think we'd want to keep that pretty safe to be able to exchange those ahead of time. So I think we've touched on it a little bit before, but it's certainly been popular to release the way of obtaining like a map piece or an unlock a little bit ahead of an expansion as well. So think of things like, the floating islands itself. You could get your Oculus ahead of time. With Masu Picchu, the climbing route and the equipment was added to the labyrinth ahead of time as well. Potato, considering even the prestige base and rift set gets ignored, it's a pain to use weaker rift traps. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we'll jot that down as well. One thing we're looking to address, it's just easier said than done, is that those bonuses don't count towards bonus hunts. So similarly, prize mice, your prestige base, or at least the bonus that you get there doesn't have an effect. Pretty much, there might be a few exceptions to the rule, but anything in the trap effectiveness or your trap stat section there that you see under special won't apply toward bonus hunts. But I agree, that's been on our list for a little bit to try to sort that out. We took a quick look in the egg hunt, but didn't quite have time. Unfortunately, it involves kind of getting way deep down into the very sort of bowels and the foundations of what has a trap, capture a mouse, and so that requires a certain level of care and certainly a lot of testing as well to make sure that we don't inadvertently break something. You can almost think of it like a Jenga tower. It's very easy to change the blocks at the top, but changing the ones at the bottom gets a little bit more precarious sometimes. Ryan says, changes are great. Would love to have a chocolate factory area, though. That could allow us to catch even more event mice. Ryan says, rereading the same one. Let me go. Aaron, if Lady Laura returns, perhaps the chocolate bar base would be available in the Trapsmith instead, so a new shelf 1 can be made. Yeah, we kind of discussed that a little bit while putting that together. There's a few things on the shelf rewards unlocks that pretty well only work well the first time that event is run through. So, I agree they'd probably end up finding a different home unless kind of a more creative solution comes out. Trevor, rewards are good. Excellent variety of wares. It was interesting that newer players are ruling the Chocolatonium scoreboard, and that is a good thing. Yeah, I guess it would depend on kind of where you're hunting and what setup you're using, but more or less, the more hunting you do, the more bonus mice show up. So there's not too much sway you can put in there, just a little bit here and there. KDM, can you allow the Easter mice a chance to drop extra charms? They deplete so quickly with the custom consumption. I assume you mean extra charge charms, because those burn up quite a bit. But I think that had already been something we jotted down as well. Maybe just a few more sources of extra charms. Tarako's liking the bonus hunts for spring egg hunt mice. That was certainly one of the more dramatic changes. Kind of born out of seeing, hey, players are really enjoying hunting down the bonus eggs. And for a long time, the stockpiles kind of felt like they were getting in the way of that fun. Or it was something that you had to do that didn't tie in well with the rest of everything. Ryan, but the Riftwalker bonus not being applied is a bad thing, yeah. Kind of on the list to try to sort that out at some point, but it is a very monolith undertaking. We're kind of hoping the spring egg hunt mice, not too many of them are all that tricky to catch, but depending on what your setup is, you could struggle a little bit. Jonathan found the egg hunt enjoyable. Would love to see Lady Laura return. Final Heart says Lady Laura and Chocolatonium is pretty great, although the cost of extra versus extra could probably be switched next year. So that's a common source of confusion. And so remember that the extra charms only consume when you find an egg, and that's what makes them so incredibly valuable. So if it were the other way around and the extra charge charms cost more, you'd go through them quickly. That's the chocolatonium cost. I think maybe could be tuned a little bit, and that might tie in with kind of other piece of feedback of more sources for extra charms. Tonium. Chocolatonium is awfully hard to spell, eh? Chocolatonium. No, I still didn't get that right. There's no N. I didn't even include an N. Chocolatonium. There it is. Bloodshot, seeing how the Gold Rose Monstro skin is a premium shop item last year, being able to exchange for Chocolatonium. Will the new premium skins be available same next year? It kind of depends. It's something, open to feedback on how you like that format. If something is originally sort of a premium shop skin, and then next year there's a different way to obtain it. We've tried it both ways, and I think maybe it's different players have different opinions on whether it should be that way or something more consistent. Let us use the charge charms in addition to normal charge charms. That's interesting. It was kind of in the original overhaul while we're looking at what to change. And one thing was potentially to move the effects of extras and extra charge into something more similar to like lantern oil, bottled wind, firebolt fuel, something where you can activate it kind of on the Spring Egg Hunt interface, but then it frees up your charm slot. And kind of as the years have gone by, we've been trying to free up that charm slot as much as possible. You have all these great charms to improve with catch rate, and trying to use charms primarily as something that you can use to add some extra power or luck to your trap, help you catch mice more than kind of affect the way you're going about an adventure. As we were kind of, the changes were stacking up, we kind of ended up pulling things back a little bit, and we thought it would be beneficial to keep things a little bit simple and then do exactly this, kind of get some feedback, get some impressions, and help kind of guide some of those final ones. So we got a little nervous about changing too much too fast. Solitaire, can we get another minigame for more fun? I don't know. I mean, we're open to suggestion, but I think maybe just keeping things kind of to just Egg Sweeper during the Spring Egg Hunt, at least for now. Kind of too many minigames might be a little bit of information overload. Yeah, for the cost of Chocolatonium, so kind of jotted that down as well. I kind of agree that should be probably flipped or adjusted a bit. Jason asks, so extra charms are only consumed if we find an egg. That is correct. So the regular extra, not the extra charge, they only consume when you find an egg. So if you buy 100 of those, they may last for 500 hunts. You kind of however often you're finding eggs, whereas the extra charge charms, they consume every single hunt. So if you buy 100 of those, they're gone after 100 hunts. Would be nice to have a better way to get extra charms. Yeah, definitely something we've jotted down as well. Kind of add a little bit more of a trickle of those. Yeah, Ben commenting as well. Kind of similar to cannonballs if we move the extra effect to something other than charms as well. Mark asking the important questions such as where in the periodic table is Chocolatonium? Look, couldn't find it. Same deal with Pollutinum. Do you have your Nonian periodic table out? I think maybe you have a different one out. Aiden asks, says, I don't understand what is the use of extra charms. So the regular extras will double any egg that you find. So let's say you get, I don't know, the over 9,000 egg. So if your trap has over 9,000 power, there's a chance any mouse can drop the over 9,000 egg. Now, if you have an extra charm equipped, the mouse will drop 2 instead of 1 of those eggs. And the extra charge charms, they do the exact same thing, but they will consume every single hunt because they also provide some stats to your trap. And they, when you find an egg, it'll add some Chocolatonium as well. So it'll kind of give you a little boost in your Chocolatonium collection. Yeah, Roxanne agrees 1 minigame per event is enough. Yeah, that creative energy maybe would go into a mini game for a different event, or or area. I don't know about playing two simultaneously. Might start to be a little bit of a lot of cognitive overload. Ryan says, freeing up the charm slot may be really game breaking, so I support leaving as is. I can't think of too many scenarios. Maybe I'm biased here because I'm camped out in the living garden, and boy, would I ever sure like to double my shattering eggs. Sit says the over 9K consume most of the extras. Yeah, it's definitely kind of a passive one. Ryan asks, can the egg sweeper shovels be added to the chocolatonium shop? Yeah, that's something else I think is on the list to kind of take a little bit of a look at next year as well. Rothith has not found any golden egg this year, even though you caught many gold foil mice. Maybe double check your inventory, but if you've been hunting regularly for 2 weeks, it should have shown up by now. I would think it'd be pretty hard to go 2 weeks without it. Getting it, at least doing even just your trap checks, 24 hunts a day. Maybe double check your inventory. Keep in mind there's a couple versions of it as well, kind of in previous years. We've kind of changed the contents, and that meant a new golden egg was birthed. Would be an idea. Very Best says to add fertilizer or shovels as an obtainable item in the chocolate shop on the shelves. Yeah, that's something we're taking a look at as well. Roxanne asks, what have you been spending your chocolatonium on, Dave? I've unlocked all the shells, but I haven't spent any yet. I tend to wait to the end and see what I'm going to do. I'm at 1,340. I sounded my horn, I caught Twisted Carmine, and I now have 1,212 living chests. So I don't know. I'm going to take stock of everything and see what's going to help me out in the living garden the most. Ariel says, bring back the charge eggs next year. It's not even a compulsory thing to do in spring. The other hunters do like it. Yeah, that's good to kind of get feedback on that as well. It's one of the more significant changes. We've been keeping an eye on how many people were interacting with it on a year-by-year basis, and kind of as the years went on, we found fewer and fewer people were bothering with the charge cycle. So, and as well, kind of some feedback of different players kind of finding it a little bit tedious. There was a lot of kind of micromanagement going on, especially for 4 straight weeks. So, yeah, it's kind of hard now that it's gone. Maybe we can gauge, did you miss it? Sometimes you don't know what you have until it's gone in some ways. So that might be a good time to get feedback on that as well. Yoshira loves the bonus hunts. Lady Laura must return this year. All right. Final Heart says double the shattering eggs, probably the most game-breaking thing, but would be nice, but maybe too strong. I don't know. I don't think so. I think the living garden has had its heyday. If you want to save up all your supplies and wait for that one moment to capture just a handful of those mice in April, I don't know if that's quite on game-breaking territory, but it's definitely a juicy bonus. Roxanne, Dave, that's so many carmines. I'm chipping away at it. We'll see how far I can get. Limbomber, I wish bonus hunts weren't so challenging while in rift areas. That's definitely something we've jotted down as well. I think what will go a long way is if we can figure out a way to have the special stats, such as the Rift Stalker set bonus and your prestige bonus, work against bonus mice. That'll certainly go a long way. But otherwise, there's a little bit of variety, a little bit of choice, knowing that, hey, if I'm hunting in the Rift, it's a more difficult region to be hunting in during the spring egg hunt, so that means I'm going to get less chocolatonium. So, I mean, the choice is yours as well. Which goals do you want to prioritize? Do you want to prioritize chocolatonium, or do you want to prioritize kind of bonus rift loot? And sort of in the grand scheme of things, that means that the eggs you find in the rift plane are just inherently more valuable than the ones you find elsewhere because it's harder or because you get less chocolatonium while you're hunting in the rift. So that kind of gives them some intrinsic value. Brian would like to know the reasoning behind Baitkeep charms costing more than Ultimate Charm. Baitkeep is more readily available via chests. Yeah, everything kind of is in different quantities, but generally speaking, a Baitkeep is perceived as much more valuable than an Ultimate Charm. Even just in terms of getting a second chance at a mouse is more potent than guaranteeing its capture for mice that are at least above a 50-50 chance to catch. So if you have a 75% chance to catch something an ultimate charm is in a way worth 25% of a catch. Not to get too theoretical here, whereas a bait keep is would be worth more. So. K&M, you could do a new area like the Laboratory Rift, creating Nani Rift parallel. Well, the Laboratory Rift exists already. There's a Burrows Rift with the Laboratory Mice. Ryan, you would love a Twisted Carmine Egg if it drops additional G essences. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always suggesting Living Garden things, but they don't always make it through the filtration process. Swift, we already can triple the Shattering loot in Lunar New Year, though. Yeah, exactly. I definitely spent some time there. Peter's very underwhelmed by the new eggs. Well, maybe you can make some suggestions for what other eggs. Often leading up to the spring egg hunt as well. Probably for a good month or two in advance. Maybe not 2 months in advance, but we definitely start picking players' brains to start to try and see what eggs they'd like to see in the game as well. Randy, as a collector of journal theme, is it possible to reduce the difficulty of the Queso Canyoneer journal theme? It is probably the most difficult, so you could see that as the crown jewel, like any serious collector. If you're collecting comic books or something, and that's like getting the original Superman, that could definitely something you want to cherish in your collection. Put it behind glass, make sure no damage comes to it. So that is a particularly hard journal theme, so it's kind of a sheer test of your collecting capabilities. Arrow got 44 shattered eggs this year. Just got another eye essence. Very nice. Ryan says the floating island eggs are a little underwhelming from the outside. The Paragons was hoping for a bit more bottled wind in there. Yeah, it varies from location to location. But in many ways, kind of the egg hunt is kind of a very passive, easy to do bonus loot event, and it doesn't really, you can stick out to your regular hunting. You get these eggs and they give you a kind of very passive bonus where you compare that to maybe something a little more potent like the Lunar New Year event, but you do need to kind of pause, collect the candles a little bit because the stockpiles are being there, but then when you go forth with those candles, it's just very potent everywhere, which is also why it's a much shorter event. But yeah, the choice is yours. Those Paragon eggs, though, they're few and far between, but every time you get one, that saves you 5 islands. So that is quite the massive boost when you get those. And Bomber wishes we could get some pirate seals from the pirate eggs. If I'm not mistaken, though, the Corsair curd is in there. So, that's the next best thing. That is one step away, but you still have to go get those mice yourself to get the seals. Ryan asks, may I know which eggs in the floating islands will consist more of Skyhor and Glass Fleece? Off the top of my head, I don't know what the best would be to focus on there, to be honest. I would think the ore and the glass eggs would be okay because they're somewhat regular, and I believe you need at least 2 of the same deposit on an island to have those show up. And No 4 is my name says, I think the Paragon eggs are quite overpowered. Well, maybe all the value of those eggs is just kind of crammed up into the Paragon eggs. Brian saved up a few hundred pirate Swiss, hoping the pirate eggs would have seals, was a little disappointed. The seals, they are quite a challenge to get, so it was kind of somewhat intentional that you'd get the cheese, but not kind of the destination, or something to help you along your journey of getting a scroll case, but not handing it to you directly. Jaren, you've been getting those Paragon eggs. It's a very welcome boost to loot. Certainly tripling one feels pretty good if you get that to happen as well. Ariel, release full set of Gauntlet eggs, maybe. Makes more sense than Valor Rift eggs, as they contain items related to their floor. Yeah, perhaps. Often what we do is we load up and we kind of look at, over the past 12 months, what are some of the more popular areas as well to try to engage interest, as well as a focus on kind of newer areas that lack eggs as well, kind of prioritize them a little bit. Ashley asks, is Ronza bringing stuff to help with floating islands? I don't know. I haven't heard from her. Daniel asks, is the Scoundrel Slayer trap inspired by a boat or a ship? It's a sleigh, but it has a little bit of a pirate theme, a little nautical theme as well. So it is very kind of Christmas holiday inspired. So it's a version of Santa's sleigh. But the whole thing is just one big death trap. Just, you don't want, when you're climbing aboard a sleigh, it's just the steps are coated in ice. It's not going to end too well. Tangent thinks only the Dragonbane charms and all but charms are worth using chocolate on. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of the choice for every hunter out there to decide, what do you want? That's a nice thing. You can kind of decide. And, different players play in different ways, whether you want to try to work out, okay, what's the absolute best thing I can buy, sell on the marketplace for gold, and then come out ahead that way. Other hunters maybe don't want to risk, especially toward the end of the event. If everyone all does the same thing, that may also mean supply is just through the roof and demand is all of a sudden hasn't changed very much. And that might come back and bite them in the butt. So other hunters prefer to kind of stick with, no, I'll get the thing that I want to use directly. So but that's nice in that I always thought that was a hallmark of a good game is when different people play it in different ways and both of them are having fun in very different ways. That's kind of always an indicator there's nice little choices to be made. Subra asks, do you need the Cloud Curd tile to get the Cloud Cruiser dirigible parts? Are they rare drops from the Wardens? I believe they are just rare drops from the Wardens. I'm pretty fairly confident in that statement, but I could be mistaken. But if I recall correctly, I mean, Floating Islands came out a while ago, but I'm fairly certain they dropped from the Wardens. But I don't think you need any sort of particular modifier active on your island or any sort of feature of that island. Bristlewood's Rift could use a couple bonus eggs there as well. The Chamber Cleaver boosts a different area. There are only another 2 eggs, yeah? I could see that as well. I have the Absolute Acolyte egg next to me, which I always thought looked pretty darn cool. Ben asks, how do you feel about a 15 jewel law trap from the Floating Islands costing more than any other trap released in the game, not to mention other 3-tier 2 Floating Island traps? Yeah, I mean, definitely all those second tier traps are kind of definitely above and beyond goals. So, but I would definitely recommend breaking that down into kind of smaller goals. So rather than kind of go to the shop, add everything up, and go, that's my goal, I have to do it all at once. That's a bit like somebody brand new starting MouseHunt tomorrow, and they go, all right, my goal, I'm gonna get to the end of the game and get every trap. It's like, well, no, that's probably going to take you a few years. So you're going to kind of slow down a little bit. But that's kind of reading between the lines of feedback. I think our takeaway there was that hunters would like to see more areas with smaller goals that all add up to one big journey, rather than kind of having one big journey in an area of itself. So in many ways, the Floating Islands is so kind of is so large and expansive, it's almost a game in and of itself. It kind of almost could function in a vacuum and could be just its very own game without even needing kind of the context of MouseHunt. Whereas something like the Fungal Cavern wouldn't quite have that same measure of depth to it. KDM asks, who came up with the name Ronza and why? I don't know. I don't think I recall how that came to be so many years ago. Bloodshot asks, where is your cook egg? That can be a tricky one. Burnt Skin, when does the Palace get released? No timeline, still kind of in the conceptualization phase, so not too much to share there. Mark asks a different question. How's the year been of making the game during COVID? I must admit, it's brightened my lockdown life. Well, that's nice to read, Mark. That's a nice thing for you to say. It's been a transition, that's for sure. We did... before everything, work from home once, maybe twice a week sometimes. So that kind of helped the transition. And certainly we're all kind of like using computers and all that. So we're all pretty good at online communication. The collaboration's been a little bit more challenging from time to time, depending what we're doing. And kind of, you need a little bit more conscious effort as well to sort of share what you're working on a little bit more regularly. There aren't those sort of organic moments where I don't know, someone's about to leave for lunch, or you go for a walk together to go get some food or something, and you end up chatting like, "Oh, what have you been up to this morning?" Or you kind of notice somebody's making a coffee, and it just feels more natural to go, "Hey, can you take a look at this? I'm struggling with this." So those little kind of organic moments, I think, are things that we've been missing a bit, but we've done our best to try to simulate that online and schedule a little bit of time to make sure we have a little bit of face-to-face time, and just encourage us all to kind of share what we're working on a little bit more regularly, to try to create more of those moments in a digital world. Ashley asks, is Sky Palace still Archduke rank or any higher rank? At the moment, it is not a unique location, and I don't. We were exploring that direction, but I don't think we will go in that direction. So it will be all contained within the floating islands. That said, no guarantees that there wouldn't be kind of title locked content within there, but at the moment, no specific plans. Ryan asks, Ryan already looking forward to the 2022 Spring Egg Hunt, asking, are we going to get Richard or Cloudbeard eggs? I think we'll discuss that more kind of after the Great Winter Hunt this year, sort of thing. But it's possible. I'm way behind in the chat, as per usual. No 4 is my name, by the way. I feel like I have to thank you for making the game so awesome. It has been the one thing that never stopped playing over the years. A very nice thing for you to say as well. I think the whole team would appreciate that. Brenda says, Arcane and Physical are the best for collecting sky ore and glass. Up high, need alert of the same item. Need alert 2 of the same item. I don't know if I follow the end of the year. I guess Scrib, hey Scrib, how's it going? Says, hey, Cavern Depth. Look, an unintentional pun. That's just, we can make puns in our sleep sometimes. Andy, I wish a way to get jewels a bit easier when you upgrade the Oculus Full. The tier 2 traps are quite insanely hard to get until the next map. That is kind of one of the objectives of the Sky Palace as well. So kind of, it's still, again, conceptual in it, but it will be provided an additional source of jewels. COVID was probably the reason I returned to MH, says Zen. Wow, interesting. Kind of a lot more time in front of a computer, a little bit more time to sound the horn on the side. Asif asks, is there a whole storyline to the game, or is it area by area? You know, it's a little bit piecemeal, and some things are left up to your imagination. But there's a few kind of threaded storylines. But for the most part, each adventure kind of tells a different story of an antagonist. Final Heart asks, any thoughts on the high volume of cloud curd people have accumulated? It seems like it gathers faster than you can spend it. That is another kind of design objective of the Sky Palace. So there are kind of the 2 guiding objectives there are to provide an additional use for cloud curd, a little bit more of an additional use for cyclone stones as well. Those 2 things have been accumulating faster than players have been using them. And it was interesting too, to see the difference between playtesting versus kind of in production, or the difference between playtesting in a test environment and then slowly going through it 15 minutes at a time over the course of 3 months. Now, obviously, we can't test something for 3 months and then decide, we got to change it. All right. And then test it for another 3 months. So in many ways, it was interesting to see kind of during playtesting, there'd be a little bit more of a prioritization to almost avoid the cloud curd on islands as much as we could. Because that would kind of mean we could get more of the other resources that we wanted. But the interesting thing is, I think once it's live and you're going every 15 minutes, you're not paying as close attention, especially on the lower altitude islands. When your Oculus is kind of upgraded as well, you tend to just kind of pick, that one's good enough. You know, you tend to settle for good enough more than perfect. Whereas in playtesting, we'd be a little bit more apt to try to no, I want to find an excellent island here. So I think the end result there was Cloud Curd, kind of out in the real game, kind of came in faster. So that's kind of one of the guiding principles with the Sky Palace as well, is to try to add a little bit of an additional use to that. Potato says, have you considered making more areas that reuse mice, like what happens in Narnia? Maybe not on that scale. Here and there, that's something that has been kicked around. I'd be interested to kind of hear what players think of that. as well. Certainly even things like kind of a few characters, maybe like the Black Widow mouse kind of being incorporated a little bit more fluidly. It opens up things on maps as well. Kind of be able to have a little bit more variety on maps might be kind of nice. But also kind of the more spread out it gets, also kind of the trickier it becomes to kind of remember where to go for those mice. So in some ways, I don't know, there's pros and cons. So there's probably a middle ground there. KDM, you got to fight for your twisted carmine egg next year. Keep slipping them ideas. I guess so. I don't get too many eggs in the living garden, so I don't get too excited to camp out here. I may change gears, but I feel like at any avenue I have to try to slowly burn through the thousands of cheese I have, I take it. Snowy asks, now that we've gone to high up in the sky, any intent to extend new area into the depth of the sea? Yeah, perhaps. There's been a few ideas floating around from both players and as well as people on the team as well. Jason, so should we not be selling our excess Cloud Curd and Cyclones? Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I mean, that is one of the challenges of kind of collecting preliminary feedback and discussing things that have yet to come out, because so much can change. And so, I don't know. I can't offer that advice to you. I can't say yes or no to that. Generic, you tend to settle for good enough doubt. I mean, there is an expression in programming of don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. Because if you try to get something perfect, what often ends up happening is you just never finish it, or you never decide you're done. So it can be a tricky balance to strike for sure. Darkstar says, Sunken City already exists, but just how deep have you gone? I guess some of the monster trench could be considered pretty deep. KDM says, any future use for Marshmallow Monterey? I don't want to get buyer's remorse. KDM, to be honest, I don't know. My instinct would tell me that we're probably done with Marshmallow Monterey. But I certainly, if it doesn't come back next year, I would be surprised if we came up with an idea to bring it back. At that point, I think we would just introduce a new type of cheese. So, I don't know. I can't make any promises, but my gut there is saying I don't think Marshmallow Monterey is coming back if you want to cash it all out now. 4 is my name. Is there going to be a way to get crafting trap loot without trading on the marketplace with other players? I understand older areas of Warpath don't have such mechanics. What about Geyser? It's something different for different types of players. Some areas have incredibly valuable items that can build traps, and they're tradable on the marketplace like that. And so in some ways you can go anywhere you want, and every time you capture a mouse you earn a little bit of gold. And so that's making some progress toward that trap. And some hunters really like that aspect, whereas other hunters like more kind of, rather than something being really rare, why don't it just take a whole lot of resources and I will spend a whole lot of time going to get that. But that can be equally polarizing, like the jewels and floating islands. If you really want all those traps, it's going to take an extraordinarily long amount of time. Whereas if it was one extremely rare jewel, you might get it on the next one. So it's kind of different feels. And we try to mix in different reward structure in different areas to try to appeal to kind of maybe like 3-4 different types of players and preferences. Ariel, make library assignment relevant again. Unfortunately, it just being kind of old, it's a little hard to maintain, and it's very impractical for us to add new library assignments at this point. So it is kind of an area that it needs to be reimagined. And so I wouldn't expect any new library assignments anytime soon until we have a chance to reimagine the Crystal Library. Whether that happens anytime soon or whether that's kind of the next version of the game, I don't know. I can't say for certain, not for sure, not for certain. Certain. I'm making up words. Ryan, I remember you mentioned that there is a theoretical max depth for Sunken City. We would have to be going way back. There must be. At some point, data layers can only hold so much information. So off the top of my head, I don't know how that is stored. If it was like an unsigned integer or if it is a string, I have no idea. But at some point, yes, if you went deep enough in the Sunken City, I think your game would just crash. You'd get an error page. You'd be like, I don't know what to do anymore. Or I don't know if maybe there's an if statement saying, well, if you're about to go past as far as we will let you go, then maybe your sub stops, or maybe it was such a large number we just assumed nobody would get there. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. Swift wants to go for the place of the origin with the iceberg. There's a lot under the water there. Dark Star, what's the plan for when you run out of real cheese to make puns of? We can always just make up our own types of cheese. That happens. Final Heart, any thoughts on a new hydrophysical or shadow trap? Yeah, we're going back a ways now, so off the top of my head I might misspeak, but when we were putting together what traps were going to be in the floating islands, we definitely kind of earmarked some of those other power types for reward space for the next area to follow the floating islands. So, you know, on some level, there's always kind of a plan or intention of new traps in all the power types, but it's just a matter of when and where. Bloodshot says, just to confirm, additional use for cloud curd or cloud curd cheese. I converted all my curd to cheese. You know, it's a little too early to say. In the current iteration we're experimenting on, it is the cheese, not the curd. So, and it was to accommodate just that scenario. So it's kind of good to kind of have validation there. If somebody did convert all their curd into cheese, there's not really a straightforward way to convert it back at least at more than one curd per cheese. So right now we're trying to make cheese work, but if that doesn't work, you know, there's no kind of guarantees. It's still pretty early days. Brian says, don't forget new Draconic. Some power types are a little more few and far between than others, but eventually they come around to shine. Forgotten Forever was forgotten. Not forgotten about, but it felt forgotten about. The forgotten areas were few and far between, and now that's been fleshed out quite a bit by now. No 4 is my name. That's correct. I just wanted to ask because you've been playing without buying traps from the marketplace, so I want to understand if that was even considered planned. You know, not sort of directly. If you're kind of going through the game in a very kind of single player experience of saying, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to get everything myself. I'm not going to use any sort of marketplace or anything. I don't know if we would directly make design decisions based off that choice. But that is kind of a unique challenge you've put upon yourself for sure. So if anything, it's going to create new challenging paths to try to go about completing adventures in less conventional ways. And so, I think on some levels that ties in nicely. It's as long as there isn't a barrier, and I don't think we'd ever kind of gate an area like, I don't know, unlocking a new area required a 1 in a million drop or something. That seems like it's an absolutely awful idea, and that would just kind of roadblock you if you were not kind of trading with other players. So it's definitely kind of above and beyond stuff, like upgrades to existing gear without it being like mandatory. Yeah, Roxanne with a fair point. You say that like they haven't made more than one pun on a given cheese type before. Certainly. I believe we certainly have. How about some pun cheese, Dave? Well, maybe. I don't know. If we have a literary-based area, that might fit well. Jared says, so you say if you go far enough in the Sunken City, you encounter the Cthulhu Crasher of Games. You might, off the top of my head, I don't know. It's always good practice to, when you reach sort of a limit and a threshold, even if you think it's absolutely unreasonable that anyone would ever reach that you still kind of just range check it and make sure it gracefully fails, doesn't crash. But off the top of my head, I don't know if that's there. Somebody may have to get to 4.2 billion meters out for us to ever find out. I don't know. Rook Works, any idea where Plank Run is? Will we get to fight them at the end? They're a hunter just like you. I would hope not, unless something horrible has happened. But that's been kind of in the idea bank as well. Kind of reimagine those. They've definitely been long overdue for a complete overhaul. If we're going to go about Plank Run pages. Now we would definitely do it a lot differently than when it started. Originally, they were actually meant to provide a little bit of in-game guidance. So kind of, predating a very well fleshed out wiki and predating the adventure book, predating even heads up displays for areas. There's very little guidance to kind of help you figure out where to go, what items to collect. And so that was one thing, was these mice would drop these scraps of a hunter that was there before you, a wiser, more experienced hunter of the past. And you could read their notes and figure out, oh, look, I can craft some cheese. If I combine these master seals and this curds and whey just right, I can make some special cheese to hunt here in Feroma. And so that was the original intention, actually, was to kind of provide a little bit of insight into crafting recipes and general strategy and direction in the game. But I think it's a better fit now for more lore and collectibles, more kind of an extra layer, the icing on the cake, but not the dough. That's not the main part of it. What do you call dough when it's been baked into a cake? You don't even make cake from dough. It's a pastry. I don't know. But it needs to be reimagined quite a bit. So it's kind of a bit of a legacy game feature, just kind of kicking around still. As if asks, any news on Ninja Bread cheese has been hidden for too long. The history there is long ago, the mountain was going to receive an overhaul. That is much different than what it received eventually with the charms and the boulder that you're smashing. And Ninja Cheese was going to be involved. But kind of when that was getting put together, kind of the people putting it together, they didn't use what we call a branch in development. And they developed it right in sort of the main, you'd either call it kind of the main branch, the master branch, or trunk is what we call it. And so that just kind of ended up slipping through the cracks. And there's this cheese in the game that was sort of, somebody was ideation, kind of putting together a proof of concept. But many years ago, it just went into production. So there it is. It's just chilling out. It's a cheese that does absolutely nothing. Bloodshot says, by the way, the bonus hunt concept was nice. We could continue with our progression at the same time with the event. That was the intention as well, especially, with the bonus eggs being such a significant part of it. It just felt like it was, too much. There just wasn't time to both accommodate stockpiles and the bonus eggs. So it was definitely a challenge. The egg hunt presents some very unique design challenges year after year as we collect feedback on it and we look to revise it and hopefully kind of incorporate feedback, iterate on it. It's the one event that doesn't really have a kind of a blank slate moment. It's very difficult to start or have a fresh start with the event. Like, this year maybe we have some great suggestions and feedback for the Halloween event. Instead of the ghost ships firing and the trick and treat cheese, the haunted manor, the pillowcase, there's been a few iterations, but all those have the benefit of being able to be given a blank slate. You can basically say, all right, I have event mice. I have to work with event mice. But other than that, everything else can go out the window. I suppose to a degree, like the collectibles, but those are typically not a huge challenge. But the spring egg hunt with the eggs, they have gameplay tied to them. And so it's just impossible to achieve that blank slate without fundamentally changing how the eggs work, which I'm going to assume wouldn't be a very welcome change. So that's what's made it so challenging over time. Mark says, literary area, there's your library expansion. Yep. There's been a few idea stubs kicking around for reimagining the library as well. It's a case of we wish we could all just clone ourselves. Or sometimes I feel like I wish I could pause time. We could make a bunch of areas and then unpause time just to get them to come out a little more regularly, but it just takes a long time to put things together sometimes. Well, and on that note here, we're at 45 minutes in. Maybe we'll switch gears over to this week's trivia question, and Larry has a reward. Hopefully this week I haven't forgotten to hide the answer on the slide. We're about to find out. I guess I could use the mode where I can preview a slide before it goes out, but we'll just risk it. All right. This week's trivia question is, what Smash-themed item preceded the excavator to be able to find bonus eggs? I feel like this sentence is not grammatically correct, or this question is not grammatically correct. The egg hammer, the rabbit hammer. You're both warm. Swift with the something mallet. Getting colder, but you're on the right track. The rocket rabbit mallet. I think number 4 is my name. was first with the correct answer, almost the fourth guess, too. That would be just serendipitous. Yes, it was the Rocket Rabbit Mallet. The Rocket Rabbit Mallet was introduced with the first egg hunt in 2011, 10 years ago. Time is passing, everyone. If you're not aware yet, time has been passing. Nobody told me. I just figured if I just was notified recently that time is passing at a rate of 1 year per year. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And the link has been posted in the chat for your clicking convenience and enjoyment. The Rocket Raccoon Mallet when? I don't know. We'll need some sort of raccoon-themed mouse or something. Maybe up for Garbage Island. Hairraiser had it, I think. I think you're correct there, Limbomber. I think it was themed after the that year's antagonist. I believe it was the Hairraiser who was holding a giant mallet, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the first spring egg hunt. So kind of thematically, you're smashing the eggs open with the hammer to get the contents. But then, as they came back year after year, that kind of got a little bit, narrative-wise weird. Like, why can't I use last year's hammer? And the hammer was limited edition, so painted into a corner. It was replaced with the excavator. A little different, if I recall correctly. I don't think you needed the hammer to find the eggs. Maybe you did, actually. Yeah, I think you did. Because I don't think there was anything preventing you from opening them. Roxanne, that was so long ago. Indeed. Steven asks, so what's the next event? We are putting together a King's giveaway, so that's kind of the next event that we have in the works for something a little small while we continue to flesh out a kind of more permanent expansion as well. So it's a nice one as well. It doesn't really, interfere with other goals that perhaps you've set for yourself somewhere. You can very easily do the giveaway while you're doing other things as well. Brian as well. I think Dave hinted at a King's giveaway. Well, I'll give you even stronger than a hint because it's it's been coming together well. So I'm pretty sure, unless lightning strikes a server somewhere, that the King's giveaway will be the next event. And Burnt Skin with the hard-hitting facts, such as yesterday was the day before today. Unless you're watching this recorded, then that fact isn't going to stand up. Azif asks, why do you still keep the unlock for 99 cents in the crafting menu? We have the wiki. Why pay for free info? Yeah, it's a little bit of an experiment to kind of see how that would be received. Scriptdev says, not the Spice Shack. I think looking beyond the King's giveaway, there's no sort of concrete plans yet, but I think we'll take a look at a lot of the mini events to kind of see what else or how that would kind of best be inserted into timelines. I think we're going to be working on a lot of kind of behind the scenes technical stuff as well as coming up, just kind of working on optimizations and things that players may not directly notice, but it's going to kind of take some behind the scenes time. So, we'll be looking for things. Obviously, there's no shortage of goals to set for yourself in the game, but some players enjoy having a goal given to them to achieve. So, we'll put some thought into that in terms of mini event, as well as just that sense of camaraderie and community. If you don't have like a goal you're particularly invested in at the moment, sometimes it's just nice and it's extra fun to be doing what other hunters are doing at that moment, because you all feel like you're working together on something. You have something to discuss, and it kind of helps make things feel a little bit more social and fun. So we'll probably be reviewing the backlog of mini events. I know there's been a lot of love for a Sunken City mini event, the one where you trawl the sea. So it seems like that one has a lot of enthusiasm. We'll take a look at that. The puzzle box as well. That one's kind of usually fairly popular when that one gets put together. The zombie invasion, it can be a little hit and miss. I feel like you love it or you hate it. So I don't know. We'll look through our backlog of mini events. They're not quite turnkey. Originally, we were hoping to create a system where it was very easy to turn them on and off. But just kind of the complexities of putting that out there's always a little bit of housekeeping. Somebody kind of has to cross some T's, dot some I's. Cross some I's, dot some T's sometimes. You don't know if it's the Rift. Ashley asks, are we getting larger party size rainbow maps? Yes, I can confirm that. So it will be a party size rainbow scroll case as part of the next King's giveaway. That's pretty well the only major change that comes to mind. I'm trying to think what else we changed. I don't think much. And you'll be able to upgrade it at the King's Arms. Upgrade a regular scroll into party-sized. What about Big Jack, says Scrib. I think Big Jack could be in the cards as well, but no guarantees yet. We haven't really set that roadmap in stone yet. I think kind of once the King's giveaway comes out, we'll sort of look ahead a little bit more and kind of see where we're at with the Floating Islands expansion. See kind of what timeline we're feeling with that to kind of know where best to sprinkle in some mini events. Brian says, I hope we get a full list of what stats don't contribute to prize mice, not effects, or class finder special, such as empowered brie and auras. Okay, that's interesting. I'll jot that down as well. Often, I guess, the high roller has some power to it, but the real hurdle there is encountering the mice more than capturing them sometimes, but I hear you. Scrib, you're still waiting for your daily gift collectibles. I don't know if I recall what you're referring to. KDM, why isn't the Spring Hunt Gardener bundle in the app? Should be. Is this an I made you look situation, KDM? Because if so, you made me look. That would seem like a bit of an odd occurrence. No, it's there. Spring Hunt Gardener bundle. It's hard because it doesn't say the name. Yeah, it's right at the top. Limit 3. Foe as well, with some enthusiasm for Big Jack. Lynn Bomber says achievements would be great. That's been kicking around. The idea bank, I think we're up to over 200 items, which would be a challenge. Challenge for the 13 members of the team to work on 200 projects. We might, by 2050, we'd probably be done, but we'll probably add lots more to that idea bank before we finish the 200 we have. Ben asks, will high altitude loot be needed in the Floating Islands expansion? Definitely been a few questions about that. We're still conceptualizing a little bit. I don't even know if next time I do Feedback Friday, whether that'll be a topic quite yet. So yeah, not too much to share yet. I don't want to misspeak too much. But definitely can share kind of some sentiments and some impressions that we have. One we touched on earlier, the difference between curd and cheese. So if you're going to need an additional use for the curd, we might provide additional use for greater quantities of cheese in case you've already crafted it. Similarly, the high altitude loot is I would think doesn't feel all that great to have a new use for it if you just spent it. So I think that's something we would definitely shy away from, and we would try our best to, avoid, unless, I don't know, absolutely a better feeling perfect idea came up, then it might happen. But I think sentiment-wise, I don't think we'd want to do that. It sure says, yay for party size 200 mice. So just more hunters, but no more mice. So we kicked that around a bit. We decided let's keep things consistent. Party size is the same map, but more people on the map. Shooting Star says, any possible upgrade for old tournament bases like gold to platinum? None whatsoever. Really, the tournaments kind of, again, are another thing that needs a complete, huge overhaul, and it's just, unfortunately, not something we've had time to do. Dark Star asking, Ron's any time the next few months? I haven't heard from her. No news from her yet. Shooting Star asks any... I'm rereading chat. I don't know why I read out of order sometimes. I don't know what I'm doing. In the real world, you could see cats are more afraid of mice and rats. That hasn't been my experience, at least with cats that I've known. They've definitely brought brought a mouse that perhaps is no longer moving and just seem very, very proud of what they brought back to their owner. So just not to paint too gory of a picture in your mind, but Sharon says, why did you stop putting the year on things like pumpkins, birthday, and baskets and what have you? We do when they are retired, for the most part. I mean, it's not kind of absolute certainty, but typically, for instance, the nice maps, they've been the exact same thing for years and years, so there's no year on them. So that in 2021, you're not finishing a map and getting a 2019 nice to chest. It's still the exact same. It's like the newest iteration, the newest version of it. But if we retire it, let's say we change what's inside the chest. If it's a dramatic change, typically we'll version it. So the old one gets kind of time stamped. It says, nope, that's the 2018 version. And now this is the new nice chest. But until it gets sort of retired, it won't have the year given to it. If that makes sense. Script of daily gift collectibles still haven't come back, such as the Teddy the Slap Cat sandwich. Oh, okay, yes. That is still kind of a to-do list item. It is still tasked up. It's been audited as well, but it's just kind of a matter of we need kind of a designer to go in there and do the design work of how does that play out. Well, we are approaching the hour mark. I think we just passed it, including the intro music. So I will take my exit here, but thank you for joining me, Mouse Hunters, and thanks for all the spring egg hunt feedback today. Jotted down a few notes. Like I said, we record all this down and we make little tasks, or we upload a document and some notes and we put it in our milestone for next year's version of the event, and then we schedule some time to review that a couple months before the event comes out, so we can kind of incorporate a lot of feedback, suggestions, or at least recall all that, get it into our short-term memories. Shirt-term memories. It's like, here, if you remember your shirt, while we're kind of going through the design work of the next year's event. So thanks for sharing all your feedback. Thanks for all your suggestions as well. I'm going to kind of itemize those, collate them a little bit, and tuck them away for 2022. I almost forgot what year it is. Oh boy. Thanks for joining me, Hunters. I'll see you next time. You know what? Before I say that, let's check the calendar. What's next Friday? Because I think last time it was a holiday. But certainly isn't this time. It'll most likely be Jacob joining you next week. Unless he's busy, then you'll probably have me again. So thanks for joining me, Hunters. Happy hunting. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, weekend, wherever you're moving on to after this. And I'll see you next time.
Have you ever gave up hope, looking for a way to cope, all alone in a castle by yourself, knowing you were made to rule, looking like a royal fool, if you only had someone to help. We got to clean these rodents out. There ain't no way we're gonna let them run this place. I'll show them what this king's about. It won't be long before we get them on the run. Here's what I propose we do. I'm gonna count on you, give you all the cheese that you could ever want. If you wanna be your best, put your trap up to the test. Buy some super brie and watch the suckers come. Oh, yeah. We got to clean these rodents out. There ain't no way we're gonna let them run this place. I'll show them what this king's about. It won't be long before we get them on the run. We got to clean these rodents out. never gave up hope, looking for a way to cope, all alone in a castle by yourself.
It's kind of a long song. Just rock it out here for some